All right, welcome to this short webinar where we are going to give a introduction to RPA and what RPA is, how it functions, what it's possible. And also we're going to go through the process which you need to follow to be able to be eligible for grants offered by the Singapore government for automation. So this is a program that's, I think, eligible up through kind of towards the end of 2021, where Singapore government offers up to 80% of the cost, basically to automate, to be able to help Singapore businesses. Yeah. So yeah, go to the next slide. So very briefly, my name is Wilhelm Björmlund. With me here, I also have Harish. I am based out of Austin, Texas. Currently, I'm here in Asia. I'm trying not to minimize my travel these days, but Austin is home base. Harish, do you want to introduce you?
Hi all, thank you for joining. My name is Harish Venugopalachar. I'm part of Symprio based here in Singapore. Yeah, we pretty much share the same expertise and enthusiasm. We both come from kind of manufacturing and supply chain and ERP background, but eventually we also feel the need of the industry 4.0 technologies that is emerging. So we are focusing also on the digital transformation initiative. So we believe this webinar will help clear some of the queries of what is RPA and how to embark on RPA journey, and then the whole process of the enterprise development grant.
With us, we also have Dushi. He's one of our automation architects. So he will also be able to answer any questions or things that you may have. If you have any questions or some practical things, there's a Q&A button in the bottom. You can just click that, type your question. So just feel free to do that, and we'll try to answer them as they come. If not, we will, after the meeting, we will share the answers to you. We're also going to share the video. So we're going to record this and we're going to share it to anyone who registered. And also we will share it on LinkedIn and a few other places. Okay, so a little bit about us. So we are headquartered out of San Jose, California, where I lived for many, many years. But now I'm a California escapee and moved to Austin. We are a UiPath partner. We have offices in Singapore as well as Malaysia and also in India, where we do a lot of the development. We are also, our core background comes from primarily around finance, supply chain processes. So we are also a gold partner with Oracle. In terms of automation, we're not only doing RPA, but we're also working on conversational AI, where we have our own platform, which also can be integrated with RPA, so that basically chat can, in essence, trigger processes, robots, or chat can behave as a human-in-loop process. Yeah? Yeah. Go ahead. So the agenda, we're going to run fairly quick because we want to actually focus more on the demo. And so probably about 25 minutes or so, we'll touch on what is RPA and how it works and such. And then we will cover, probably spend a good 10, 12 minutes on basically a few demos where you can, in essence, see a robot or a few robots in action and how they work. Yeah, go ahead. So what is RPA? So I've met with many clients, and they get disappointed when we don't come logging in with a with a robot. It's software. It's not a physical robot. That even though we have kind of that depicted here, but it's basically think of a robot that similar to a macro that maybe you've built in Excel or you know other kind of software on your machine. RPA is similar to that. So pretty much everything that a human person can do on a computer, a robot can do, right? But in addition to doing what a human does on a machine, it can also call system and deal with those systems directly through REST APIs, backend databases, and such. So pretty much any process that you do on your computer, it can do. Obviously, it's not going to create a drawing of a new building where creativity is required, but anything in essence that's more repetitive in nature, then a robot can in essence do this. So, you know, I'm not going to go through here, but as you can see, this the latest, in essence, in the technology, and as we progress here, we've gone from mainframe systems back in the 60s, I guess, to maybe 10 years ago, cloud, where cloud has been a big driver within IT, and automation with robots is really now a big driver for automating business processes, similar to how cloud has been a big impact to IT processes. So one thing, they say 93% of organizations that are driving towards digital transformation say that automation, or primarily using RPA robots, is really what kickstarts the transformation. So that's, now let me go a little bit more into what a robot can do. So can you go to the next? So a robot can in essence log in to any application, just like what you do on your machine. It can move, copy, edit files, typically it's like Excel operations, but it could also be documents and such. It can read and write to databases or integrate to those via APIs. A little bit more advanced, but it can extract content from documents, PDFs, emails, etc. Open, send emails, create attachments, read attachments, even chat. And it can scrape data from web pages or other applications and basically follow a business rules, make calculations, etc. And kind of a lot of, when we say business rules, a lot of the what if then kind of rules can be built into the robot. Now, the processes that are typically best suited for automation are those that are highly manual and repetitive in nature. Should be in essence somewhat rule-based. You don't want to necessarily try to automate a process have a lot of exceptions that requires human decision making. It should have where standard formats or readable files are leveraged, and ideally where you have some high volumes, right? So basically we're something that you do at least 5, 10 times a day. I mean, there are companies that are running robot farms, in essence, with 1,000+ robots that are handling millions of transactions every day. Yeah. So can you go to the next one? So here are just this, really there's no limit to where an RPA or robot can be incorporated, but here is a depiction of the various areas within a typical organization where robots can play a role and execute processes. So as you can see, it really is all the way from HR, customer service, finance and accounting, IT support, all of those areas are ripe for automation. So one of the key, what I view as the key differences between RPA IT projects versus other types of IT projects is typically when you implement RPA, you're implementing a process to automate in a number of weeks, where a simple process can be implemented as little as 2-3 days, whereas a complex process may be a month or 6 weeks or so. Whereas, when you look at other types of IT projects, they're typically implemented in a number of months or even years. Obviously, highly scalable. So you can scale up or scale down. So once a process has been implemented, whether you have 10 transactions a day or 10,000 a day, you just have to scale up the necessary hardware to be able to process the number of transactions that's coming in. It's really limited coding, particularly UiPath is very intuitive and relatively easy to learn. So, for simple processes, people that have learned the basics of UiPath are able to also create new automations on their own. Obviously, for more complex processes, or where it's more variability and such, you would need people with experience to be able to do that. So obviously these robots can be available 24/7. They never get sick, they never get tired. So they could be significant cost savings. And once a process has been implemented, there's really it won't make human errors. So one of the key advantages you see with RPA is that it basically increases the accuracy of the processing that's happening. One that's important, just like what you do, you may be touching applications, could be very old applications, even like AS from kind of green screen AS400 type of applications that you access. Robots can do the same. So there's no impact to your legacy applications or existing systems. Whether it's a web application or a desktop application, even understanding and reading basically the images that are coming up in an application, the robots are able to detect that. So, in essence, we take the more boring, repetitive work, we speed it up. We, if you're relying on humans to do things, if you send an email at 5:30, they might get to it tomorrow morning at 9:30. Whereas with robots that can run 24/7, they can basically execute those transactions in essence within minutes. So by removing such boring, repetitive work, we increase employee satisfaction and engagement. Yeah. Go ahead. So we are a UiPath Gold partner. We have a fairly sizable team with UiPath experience. Dushi is our key expert. Now, UiPath, why we chose UiPath and why we focus on UiPath is, one, I truly believe they are the best RPA tool out there. It's generally speaking, if we have to estimate the effort to implement RPA process on other tools, like we also do, we've done Automation Anywhere, also Blue Prism. Generally speaking, we estimate about 30% more effort to implement that, and also requires more technical know-how than UiPath. So UiPath is relatively quick to implement, and also has a lot of features, and basically the company that I believe invests the most in basically improving their processes and tools to be able to accomplish automation. So every quarter, every few months, there are new tools or new features that they're constantly releasing. Some of the more recent ones include document understanding, which is there to basically be able to process documents such as invoices or loan applications or such kind of documents using robots. And we've seen some examples where using document understanding, they're even almost out the gate, they're achieving, I think, 93% or so straight through processing. So basically invoices comes in, 93% of the invoices gets validated and basically entered into the ERP system without any human intervention. 7% would require some human intervention because there's some things it can't find, can't understand, etc. But it's a self-learning process so that basically it continues to improve. Yeah. So go ahead to the next one. So just, I'm not going to drain this. I know this may seem a bit salesy, but we are in somewhat of a unique position. We are, unlike many other RPA vendors or providers who basically help companies implement, we come with a very strong ERP and system implementation background with a very good understanding of business. So we have 100% track record in delivering any committed bot to production. And I think that is because we take careful assessment of any process before we start. And there have been processes we've in essence rejected because we don't see them as being possible to automate. But every process that we have selected or basically decided to proceed with, we have been successful. So we have, and as part of that is we've developed a set of tools and processes and QA process, particularly to be able to ensure that basically every one that we take up, we deliver successfully into production. Go ahead, next. So I'm not going to drain this again. I want to get to the demo. That's more fun. This here is an example of it's a pharmaceutical company. They distribute test kits. They have offices in Malaysia, Singapore, and several other countries around this region. They use SAP as their primary ERP system for finance and supply chain. Now, they had lots of manual Excel processes outside, and we've been kind of through this journey with them. And I think we went live with one new process even last week. So they continue to identify new processes for automation. So here below you can see some examples of some of the processes that we've put into production. So sending out order acknowledgements, down payment. So a lot of the finance processing that was done manually is now basically almost exclusively be handled by robots. So I think at this point they would not want to go back to the manual process and want to basically they're sold on basically the value that this can provide. And as the company grows and transaction volumes increase, their ability, one of the reasons why they will in essence continue, because in essence they can delay upgrading some of their ERP systems, because many of these kind of offline manual processes that were executed are now basically done using robots. So there's no need in essence, because things are done quickly, even though they're somewhat semi-manually executed. We'll go to the next one. The next one is an insurance company. Insurance company is one of the biggest adopters of process automation. So this one here was for claims processing. So it's handling, basically capturing information, is doing some of the assessments, and it's at the end, I think this processes hundreds of transactions every day, and basically primarily using both web applications as well as AS400, the green screen applications. And basically, they're saved at least, I think they're saving 2 to 3 FTEs in terms of savings, which is now handled by robots. Okay. The next one is Next Tracker. They're a solar, what should I call it? Kind of solar. They do the infrastructure for solar panels to move with the sun. There, it was primarily focused around supply chain. Here, we basically have a robot which manages, in essence, the collaboration with suppliers. So they have a lot of part suppliers, which basically the robot sends out Excels to the suppliers. Suppliers updates, commitments, changes, etc. in those Excel, which is a very controlled Excel spreadsheet, and then basically process this in the end and updates the ERP systems with the commitments. So basically, it's a whole communication and collaboration with suppliers, which was highly manual. So they're estimating here that they're saving about 30 man hours every week across multiple teams. And also the speed at which the information is processed is much faster than what it used to be earlier. It used to take several days from when the supplier sent the information in until basically they would act on it. Now, basically, that information gets in within minutes after the supplier's response. Even the follow-ups to the supplier, if they don't send a response, the robot will send out follow-ups to be able to get them to send it. Yeah. So these are just some examples. There are many others, but some examples of how robots can solve a variety of problems which are highly manual in nature. So now we're going to go into some demos. So I'll hand it over to Harish to go through a couple of demos to see. Yeah.
Thanks, Wilson. Yeah, as Wilson was explaining, like the employee satisfaction is one big thing, and the cost savings within an organization that drive users to come up with many use cases on their own and suggest saying, yeah, let's automate this, which is very interesting. So I hope you can see my screen, which is a video player. We have a pre-recorded session of UiPath in action. So this business process is basically typical in any organization. Any organization definitely now these days has multiple IT applications, and there's always a need to ensure the user accounts and the user onboarding or offboarding is a very tedious activity, especially in small or medium scale enterprises, especially when you don't have one single kind of identity management that synchronizes all the user accounts. So in this case, we have seen several companies spend at least 30 to 40 minutes for each individual user if there is an onboarding or an offboarding request, and depends on the number of IT applications they have, the time and the effort increases. So with this automation, it actually what the robot does is it goes into ServiceNow, finds offboarding or an onboarding request, gathers the details from that request, and goes to each of the IT applications and see whether it needs to either activate a user, create the user, or end-data user. So that's the whole use case scenario of this. Okay, let me start the demo. So what you're seeing behind is basically the main heart of UiPath, which is basically the studio where all the automations are built. So in production, the end users would not actually see this. So this runs under the hood. What users would see is a simple terminal on their Windows desktop where they will launch the process. So in this, we are just showing what actually happens behind the scene also. So if you can see, the there's no coding, there's not much of coding involved. Everything is kind of process or workflow driven, where the process is built. So first step, the robot is logging into ServiceNow. So in this case, it the credentials are also not hard coded in the UiPath. These are maintained as assets in the credentials repository. So where only the administrator can have access to change the credentials if they are changing. But otherwise, these information are no need to hard code or maintain anywhere in the system. Right. So in this case, it is going by a specific query to find a request based on offboarding or an onboarding as a keyword, and then finding the specific request. And it also, if you can see, it captures the user information. You can see that in the red highlight. So this is basically in a debug mode. We can see what the robot is actually doing. So these are the elements that the robot is trained, or the packages are built to read this particular uh, element and capture the information from here. And then eventually this information will be used elsewhere, right? That's the whole process. Okay, so in this, it captured the information from the ServiceNow ticket, which is basically an offboarding request, and then it can close this application, log out, and then go to the next application. So in this, the next application, what we have is basically an Office 365, or you can think of it as an Active Directory, where it can verify whether the user on a particular date, based on the request from the IT department, whether the end date is already happened or yet to happen. So based on the information from this Office 365 user management, it can take the next course of decision. That means we can build a rule saying, if the user is deactivated in this Office 365, then it needs to go to the other applications also and do the same. That's the rules that we have built in this case. So it is searching for the user which was indicated in the ServiceNow ticket. And it also captures, you can see the red highlight, it is capturing additional data elements where it will maintain a log or a simple Excel file saying what the robot, what activities it performed on a particular given point in time. So that's where it is capturing all the elements. So in this case, the robot was able to determine that the user is already deactivated or undated, and then the rule specifies that it can go to the other systems and deactivate it if they're not done so. So the next application, it is actually going to Jira. So it will log into a Jira application. Jira is kind of more of a agile project management kind of a tool. So in this, it will again go to the user management and query the same user that was specified in the ServiceNow ticket. And then it finds the user information, and then there is a ban kind of action. Several system has different terminologies. So in this case, it is actually ban. And while doing so, it will also capture the reference information from the ServiceNow in here, and then it deactivates. Right. So that's the speed at which some of these activities needs to happen in even a small organization. You can't
So
even let.
just to be clear, so everything that you see on your screen now, Harish is not doing this. These are all performed by the robot. All of this will be performed by the robot behind the scenes, and this can obviously run 24/7. So it's not, we're not faking it. It's done. All of this is done by the robot.
So the next application, this is again a web-based application. So it is going to an Oracle Cloud Infrastructure uh, application, and even here it will find the same user. It can query the information based on the information that it captured initially, and then it will go in and then do the same deactivation. Right. So imagine this for a person doing this manually on a day-to-day basis, and if you have uh, maybe over 100 or 200 employee base, and every day you have 3 to 5 requests coming in, then it's actually not an ideal job for an IT analyst or an IT department to keep on doing this. These can be easily automated, and they can focus on other uh, value add tasks which they can focus on. So it deactivated from the Oracle Cloud. And then we also have another example where not just a simple web-based application, this is more of a Java-based application. So this is basically going into an Oracle ERP application. So even though the logging is through a web-based, the subsequent forms are open as a Java applet. So it will open the Java applet as per the navigation and the rules built in. Then it will go to the user management, and it will deactivate the user which was specified in the ServiceNow ticket. And all of this, it is also capturing or logging the information that it is successfully able to log into this application and do the activity as mentioned in the rule. If there are exceptions in between, it can also kind of notify the administrator that yes, between 10 or 15 applications, it was able to successfully do this task for maybe 12 or 13 applications, 2 or 3 applications it was not able to kind of access, or it had some issue. So all those information it can capture and relate back to the concerned people to take action, or it can retry based on the rules that can be defined. So this is how in an Oracle ERP application, which is on a Java uh, form, it is able to go in and do the task, right? So at the end, what it is doing is it will go back to the service now, right? One thing is uh, as an end-to-end automation, we also need to look at, yes, it read the ServiceNow ticket, but at the end, it should go back and ensure the ServiceNow ticket is updated and closed, so that there's no need for a person to look into this ticket again, right? This task is taken by the robot, and it will come back again to ServiceNow and search for the ServiceNow ticket request, and then update the information that the activities that it already did. So in this case, if you can see, it is saying Office 365 was already blocked. So it is assumed as successful. Then Jira, the robot was able to block. In Oracle Cloud, the robot was able to block. And then the Oracle application. And then there is another application called Amway. There was some exception, and then it is notifying here that there was an exception, and then it was not able to kind of do the activity. So with this information, uh, it ensures that the full end-to-end life cycle of an onboarding or an offboarding activity of a simple, I mean, you can think of this task as a very simple task, but when you add a lot of employees to an organization, and when you add a lot of applications, and if they're not synchronized um, in any way, then it actually adds complexity. And also it's the speed at which you need to take action in terms of IT. You have to take action as soon as you get a request that yes, this person is resigned, and this is a date that all the application access has to be restricted. Right. So this is one simple example where a very simple robot. This can be an attended robot, or this could be on an unattended mode. Also, this can be run, and it can ease up a person's task very easily.
So we have one question from one of the users. Is uh, Office with the ServiceNow, it offers APIs. Whether the robot could call those APIs instead of going through the front end.
Or I believe yes, UiPath has a lot of built-in connectors with many enterprise class applications. One is definitely ServiceNow, Oracle, SAP. It has a lot of native and API-based call where you don't need to kind of use a browser or a web-based or a GUI-based RPA process. Of course, If there are connectors and the processes readily available, your path can do this task without actually launching the screen. I mean, this could be for a small organization where this, as I said, this could be an attended robot where it can run on the uh, IT analyst desktop, where he can just launch the process, probably on a virtual machine, and then he can act on other things that is happening.
Yeah, and another question is, do we always have to launch it manually, like you did here?
Uh, Basically, yes and no. I mean, if we are talking about attended robot, there are basic ways to kind of trigger the process using simple Windows scheduler. You can say that on this at this given time, launch this process and run this process. It can run on any virtual machine. So that is one simple way. If you are talking about unattended robots, then you have a definitely a lot of inbuilt triggers and events that you can set rules so that robot can take action whenever.
Yeah, so that's an important point. I think there's a key, particularly with UiPath. There is also a license difference between attended robots and unattended robots. So unattended robots are more expensive, but they come with what's called an orchestrator. So an orchestrator, think of an orchestrator as, in essence, a manager who manages the different robots. So tasks get sent to the orchestrator, and that could be done based on business events. So if certain things happens, it sends that to the orchestrator, which then sends the task down to an available robot. So particularly it would be important if you have a very large transaction volumes where maybe you need 10 robots to handle the volume, then you need an orchestrator to be able to distribute the tasks to the different robots. That's an example of an unattended robots. But manual or attended robots are also quite powerful in the sense that, yes, it typically you would launch it manually, or you could run a Windows scheduler to schedule it. But even then, tasks can generally be performed much faster than what a human can do, or a human or in some cases people have a separate machine which if they're running many processes on robots, they go launch a robot, and it can loop through 100 transactions in maybe a couple hours while they're working on other things, and then basically they go back and launch the next process. So even with attended robots, there can be still significant value to automate a large number of processes.
Yep. And of course, yeah, robots. We can also have many processes where human in loop involvement is needed for any complex decision making. If robot needs to kind of get an approval before taking an action, there is a action center um, kind of functionality within your path where the process can be routed to a particular person as a notification, and the person can take the action. Only after that the robot can go to the other task. So that's also a possibility. So I'll quickly take maybe another couple of minutes to show another use case. So this is more about a complex AI-based document understanding. So the first one was fairly a simple. Many organizations would have something similar on Excel IT application or a simple business process to be automated. So this one is a bit uh, complex in terms of uh, document understanding, where the robot needs to read a PDF document, process the information, and then tag the information accordingly and capture the elements specific to the document labels, and then be able to transfer that information either to other application or Excel or any other application that is needed. So in this case, it actually reads a commercial invoice document and then captures the information, and then it presents the captured information for a validation station, so that you can improve the accuracy of the information being captured, and then subsequently it can process bulk documents at greater accuracy. So in this, we are using document understanding, which is UiPath native built uh, process. So this can, in this case, so it is actually reading the commercial invoice document, and then capturing. If you can see, it is already pre-populated with certain information like bill to, billing vendor, invoice number, payment term. So these are all pre-built, kind of pre-trained ML, models that I would say rule-based information that you have already built. Of course, you have the flexibility to build your own ML models and train if you have a complex document. But most of the standard kind of invoice.
So that's an important thing to remember, right? Because UiPath and others as well have pre-built document understanding models, meaning that the machine learning model has already been trained to recognize where and what are the different common fields in an invoice. So it is, in this example here, even though UiPath has never seen this particular invoice in the past, it's still able to capture the information correctly. So you can see that it's capturing the bill to, the vendor, the invoice number, its payment terms, the total amount. All of this information is getting correctly captured by UiPath without any prior training. So this is an example of how powerful a pre-trained ML model can be used. So we are using here the pre-trained invoice model to be able to capture the information.
So in this, on the left-hand side, this is basically a validation station. And initially, certain documents, of course, the person can validate if the information captured is correct. And then, as you can see, there was a partial information being captured for payment term, and the user can correct that, tag the information from the right-hand side of the document, saying what is the full information to be captured. And then once this information is saved, so in essence what the UiPath is doing is it's actually internally retraining itself, saying okay, the additional space or the additional data from this payment term needs to be captured for subsequent similar type of invoices. So that's how it will kind of improve the accuracy by processing many such documents on its own. So that's about one of the document. And then the next process is either this information can be fed into a ERP application or Excel or any other document. So in this case, there's a PDF form that the information should be populated. So this is a PDF data entry form. So what the robot is doing is whatever information it captured in the previous step, it is actually populating into this PDF form, and then it would eventually save this PDF form. Imagine doing this manually. This is a very laborious, time-intensive, and error-prone activities. So leaving this to robot definitely speeds up the activity, and also the accuracy rate is definitely increased. So it is capturing. So this form has multiple pages, and it captured all the information, and then eventually it will save the file as per the rules mentioned. So that's the kind of quick demo I wanted to show on. One is a simple use case of an IT application, and then another complex business case or business process of document processing. Eventually, what it will do is, as I said, it is capturing all the information as in an Excel log file, so that the information can be verified whether the information that the robot captured is correct or not. Wilson, do you see any other questions?
No questions so far. If anyone have any more questions, please feel free to type your question. So just so invoice is one example, but with UiPath's document understanding, it's also quite flexible in training up other kinds of documents. So it doesn't have to be invoice; could be any kind of document, like a loan application or anything like that. Can also be trained to be able to process and extract the information. And these engines, in essence, get smarter over time, because as you as you use document understanding, you're in essence providing feedback to the engine, so that basically next time it's going to get smarter, right? But as you can see, even out of the box, even never having seen this kind of invoice before, even with that, most of the information gets captured correctly. Okay, so I think that's it for the demos. We could spend a lot more time on this, but actually we have one more question. How much is a typical RPA project to do invoice processing? So yeah, what cost components? So so we'll get to this question. Let's see. So why don't we first go through, and then we'll get back to that question, the specific question.
Sure. Yeah. So in this in the last few slides, I'll explain the process of Singapore Enterprise Development Grant. So this is a very good initiative in Singapore that the government has taken. So basically what this is an initiative by Enterprise Singapore, which is part of Singapore government. So this grant helps Singapore companies basically to grow and transform. So it actually looks at the grant is meant to support projects for companies that embark on upgrading your business, innovating, or even venturing overseas. So in the context of automation, there are 3 or 4 pillars that the enterprise development grant is available. But specifically, if we talk about process automation and process reengineering, it falls under the innovation and productivity support grant. So in this, it supports the companies in the areas of growth or look for ways to enhance efficiency. So these are basically for any companies that embark on reviewing and redesigning workflow and process that improve their efficiency, and or also implement automation technologies like process automation, robotic process automation, to make routine tasks more efficient, right? So these definitely fall under the one of the pillar that the enterprise development grant is offering. And specifically under the innovation and productivity, if we talk about the automation initiatives, so this is to support your company's usage of automation and technology. And definitely they also, the government also ensures that these initiatives have some tangible benefits and significant growth. So there are several documents and information that needs to be provided in order to be eligible and claim the grant. So in a way that kind of governs the process for the Enterprise Singapore. So typical scope of work for such an initiative, what can be covered are adoption or development of sophisticated hardware or software solutions, and development of solutions that involve, typically this in terms of automation, it could be the actual robot as an automation also. Like if you can think of warehouse, you can have warehouse automation as which requires a lot of hardware and machinery. But if we talk about software robots, mostly it involves software and processes only. Right?
So back to the question. The question was how much effort would it be for invoice processing? It's a little difficult to say, but I would say it would be a project probably in the range of, 6 to 8 weeks to get it on. It depends on how many languages needs to be supported. It depends on variability, quality of the documents, and so forth, right? So using our rates, that would probably be around, between 15 to 20K Sing for the project to implement. And then in terms of licensing, you would need basically either UiPath document understanding. So we would select which software to use based on primarily driven by volume. So there are generally two we would use. One is UiPath document understanding, which has basically smaller chunks available. So if your invoice volume is relatively low, I think what's the volume? I think it's $8,000 for 16,000 documents or something like that. Is it? Yeah. So it's $8,000 for 16,000 documents. That's US dollars. And then the other option is to use ABI, which is about 23K for 120,000 documents. So if you're running very high volumes, it would probably make more sense to use ABI, just because of the cost. The ABI and both UiPath and ABI are top players in terms of document understanding, and both are very good solutions as well to be able to process invoices. The second part of that would be in terms of hardware. It generally, assuming that these invoices are already in PDF, you wouldn't necessarily need a scanning stations and such. But if you need to, if they're physical documents that need to be scanned, then obviously you would have to scan them. So there would be some cost to that, but scanners obviously is not very costly these days. And then there is also then there's the actual robot. So in this case, it can be, and Dushi, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we can run with document understanding with either a attended robot or an unattended robot. Either one is possible, Dushi?
Both is possible, Wilson. Both option can be done.
Okay.
Can be attended or unattended.
Okay. So that would basically, roughly an attended robot costs $1,200 per year, but you also need a studio, which is, so in total is about 4,000. And then an unattended robot with a cloud orchestrated unattended robot runs around 10K per year, right? So that's what it would be, about $800. This is US dollars I'm reporting, and these are list prices. But under this program here, then as it states here, right? So software implementation are all eligible for this grant. So the way this would work is we would basically create a quote. We have to do some assessment upfront so we can get a good quote for you. And then basically we would share that quote with you. Then you use that quote to apply for a grant. And depending on what size or company you come from, if you're an SME, you can get up to 80% of that covered. And then if you're a non-SME, an SME is up to 100 million Sing in revenue per year. So if you're less than 100 million, then you can get up to 80% covered. So that's basically, so if you think about that, though, you're probably looking at close to 30, let's say 35,000 Sing roughly, if you're processing fairly, or let's say 40,000 Sing for 1 year for handling up to 120,000 invoices, but for of which about 80% of that could be covered by this grant.
Right. I think there's a couple of other questions. I think one is, how do you manage various password? Keeps changing. I think Dushi is already probably responding. So basically, yeah, passwords, as I mentioned earlier, these are maintained as a in the credential repository. Maybe Dushi can pitch in and say uh, how they are kind of uh, synchronized. Dushi, maybe you want to pitch in?
Yep. We maintain all credentials in the credential manager. If it is a non-orchestrator environment, if the environment don't have any orchestrator, we will maintain credentials in credential manager. If we have orchestrator, we have option for it's a password wallet. We have in password wallet in orchestrator. We can maintain over there. So you no need to go and change the password in the code or somewhere else. You no need to. There's no development involved to change the password. Just go and change the password in the credential manager or password wallet in orchestrator. That's all.
I hope this answered your question. And another question was on the process of the grant proposal. Yes, definitely, yes, we can help that. I think the next slide is on the process itself, the application process and the claim process. So, yeah, quickly show that. So yeah, the process is fairly well documented in Singapore, as you all know. And then I can break it down into pre-application, application, and the claim process. Claim as a three major section itself. So as a pre-application, I think first quickly you can establish or even we can check the eligibility, like the company should be registered and operating in Singapore and so on. So these details are definitely available on the web, and of course we'll be sharing this slide also. So once the eligibility is established, and then we need to identify what you're embarking on. So basically identify and scope. So project category is basically saying, yes, we want to claim this grant under the innovation and productivity for automation. And once that is identified, then next step is you identify a vendor and get a quote from the vendor. That's where you kind of gather all this information and prepare a project proposal. I mean, there are templates already provided by the Enterprise Singapore on their website. Definitely, yes, even we can help prepare those project proposals. And additional documents are basically from your side, which is your ACRA search information, your audited financial statements or certified management accounts for the last financial year. With the quotation is what. So these are the information that needs to be gathered before logging into uh, the portal and the application process itself.
So just one point is in terms of the quotes, we are a UiPath Gold partner, so we also do get some discounts from UiPath, so we can quote for both the software as well as the implementation. That's what we can help you with.
So once these information are prepared, and the next step is applying. So you need to use your CorpPass account to log into the portal and then apply. Um, so once the application is applied online, then yeah, it takes about 8 to 12 weeks of processing, right? So the guidelines from Enterprise Singapore is that, yeah, you don't embark on a project. So usually this is given for a new project or a new RPA as a solution that you are putting in your company. So this would take about 8 to 12 because they review and then approve the proposal. Once it is approved, the government will issue a letter of offer. So this letter of offer needs to be acknowledged and accepted, so that you can start the project and then go to the next process of the claims. Um, so I hope the pre-application and the application process is pretty clear. Of course, I mean, these information are readily available in the web, and we can also help if you have any doubts on any aspect. Definitely, there are help desk given from the Enterprise Singapore that we can check. Definitely not an issue. I think there's one more question.
Let's see.
Yeah, that's a good question. So these days, as a SaaS-based product, these are all annual software licenses. Okay? So typically, as the grant states, the grant is provided for the qualifying period. Uh, so that means if you have initially purchased a 1-year license and implementation services and so on, so that is the basis for which the grant will be provided. But of course, we are also checking if a company can go with like multi-year license upfront. We are pretty confident and with the process that yes, that will be kind of part of the claim. But the next, if the subsequent year onwards, yeah, that is not part of the claim. You cannot claim the subsequent year if you renew your license. Uh,
But at
that
least what we can do is we can sell UiPath licenses, multi-year UiPath licenses in one shot.
that's
It
correct.
doesn't have to be an annual license. It could be a multi-year license that gets paid up front. That way, I think you should be able to take advantage of the grant. We obviously there is an approval process, but we can help you with basically filling out that to if you have any doubts.
Okay. So once the project is completed, I mean, that's where the claims process needs to be done. Again, this is through the portal itself. So the letter of offer will have the project qualification and the list of project deliverables that was initially presented. So these indicate saying by when the project should be completed. Typically, yes, we'll have in the quotation we'll also have enough buffer to ensure that the qualifying period is enough for completing the project. And then uh, so once that's the first checkpoint after completing the project, is to ensure that yes, uh, you have completed the project within the qualifying period and all the deliverables are met. And then subsequently you need to prepare the document for the claims process itself. So which is again mostly about the project. So these are project report. There are certain deliverables documentations, and they have uh, templates for which I mean checklists are readily available, which we can give more details on this, and definitely the project invoices. So with these documents, again, you can go back to the same portal using a cart pass and then submit the claims. So along with submission, you also need to select. I mean, they have pre-selected auditors who would randomly or systematically check the information submitted and ensure they are in place before the claim is awarded. So in this, so once you submit, I mean, claims are submitted with the necessary project documents. It also, the auditors also would require the expenses documents, which is basically the invoices and the receipts. So once this is done, so the next step is basically the verification from their side. They would typically verify within the system itself, unless they have any questions or clarification. They would reach out for any doubts. So from the Enterprise Singapore itself, the officer verifies the project deliverables, and from the auditor, they verifies the project invoices and the receipts are in order. So once this is verified, and then the next step is the grants disbursement itself. Right. So this would be through a gyro payment. I mean, they would do a bank in to your bank account specified. So this is about the enterprise development grant application and the claims process. I have also given the link here, which of course will be shared with you. You can also go through this information readily available on the government website. And of course, if you have any further doubts, we are of course here to help you with any clarifications. Is there any other questions so far? Questions?
No, I think go to the next one.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a simple simulation of a project cost and the grants process itself. So in this example, ABC company is a Singapore SME, has already started implementing RPA, and then it's completed the project and then submitted the claims, right? So in this, typically, it's if you're talking about a simple process, simple attended kind of robot scenario with one process to automate. This is a very basic, I would say, an entry or a starter pack to start with for a small scale industry. So in this case, the project items would be UiPath, RPA developer software license. So with this, you will get a UiPath Studio and one attended robot to kind of use. So this estimated list price from UiPath is about 4,500 Sing dollars annual license price. And then typically, if we think about a medium complexity simple process, we're talking about probably about 14, 15 days of implementation services. Roughly would cost around 7,500 to 7,700 Sing dollars. Assuming the total cost is project cost is around 12,000, and if the claim process is successful, and you would get a grant of almost 80% of it if you're an SME, which is about 9,800 roughly. So we are talking about a net investment of $2,400, which is very kind of insignificant if you talk about the benefits and the cost savings that you could gain. So yeah, any further questions on this? This is a very simple case we have put here, but of course even uh, complex projects we have seen. I mean, there's not much issues we have seen in Singapore in companies claiming the grants. Right.
A couple of questions. One is prospect of job openings for entry level with this kind of implementation. Yes, definitely there are. This is a very rapidly growing industry, and basically a lot of companies we are seeing a huge growth also within our own company because we help companies implement. The expected annual growth rate for RPA over the next 7 years is expected to be on the average about 37% every year. So many companies that have implemented RPA last year are expecting to double up their investment for next year, double up the number of robots that's going to be given. The next question is a good question. Is there a cap on the grant? I do not think there is no official cap.
Yeah, there's no mention about any cap, but of course, yes. I mean, we can check and answer back also on this part. But on the official websites, typically for these projects, we have not seen any cap mentioned anywhere. So yeah, but we can also check and get back on this.
Yeah, but the next one is implementing partner has to be Singapore based only. Not that I'm aware of. Now, the way we implement typically is we do it partly onshore or partly in Singapore and partly offshore. When we say offshore, it could either be in Malaysia or it could be in India. But basically, we would typically work closely with the customer, sit down with the business user, have them explain the process in detail. We will also come with a set of fairly detailed questions evaluating a process so that we can be confident that, because we do not, I want to keep the 100% success rate up. We do not want to start a project and fail. So instead, we put a bit of effort up front to evaluate, to ensure that this truly is possible to implement. That we would do in person in Singapore. And then basically from an actual development, that could be really done from anywhere. But as far as I do not, we are obviously a company operating in Singapore, but I do not know if, I don't think there is a specific requirement that it has to be based out of Singapore.
Yeah, at least the billing entity, if it is a Singapore based, that's not an issue. The services can be provided like offshore or any other base. That's definitely not an issue.
Yeah. Any other questions? If not, I think we're done. We ran a little over. Okay. Any deadline to implement the project, the grant? The deadline, yeah. So it is till September 2021, and this program is in.
Actually, as per the last year budget, I think this is what has been indicated. But looking at the current COVID situation, I believe and I hope there will be an extension in this year's budget as well. But we just need to wait and see. But officially, this is what is kind of mentioned based on the last year's budget.
Yeah, whether that date is for the application and approval or just the application, that's a good question, given that it's an 8 to 12 week kind of turnaround time.
Yeah.
You know what? We will probably need to follow up on that one to check, unless you know, Harish.
Yeah, I need to check as well. I don't remember this sort of my.
I would imagine it's the application.
Yeah, it's the application process. Once the letter of approval is granted, I mean, they would determine the eligibility period by when the project should be completed. That's what I've seen. But definitely, yes, we can check with the help desk and get back. Yeah.
Okay, I don't. If there's no other questions, then we are going to share this PowerPoint. We're also going to upload this link, the video, the webinar onto YouTube. We'll include a link to that. And then can you go to the next slide real quick? So you can also contact. We also will include this here, but these are the contact numbers and email addresses to contact any of us. Harish and Ram are both in Singapore. And we can also be contacted at Symprio. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact us or drop us a note, and we are more than willing to help you. Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you.